Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. Mahomes takes the snap. He is just going to throw it long for Demarcus Robinson. It is going to use up all the time. The game is over, and the Chiefs' kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff. Well, good evening, sports fans. It is an interesting time to be a sports fan, let alone a human on planet Earth.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about that?
So, this thought has crossed my mind a few times, especially the second half of this week. I don't think Joey more so than I, because I like to tease him about this, but in reality, probably me too. I think we would give virtually anything for a sports slate that resembles July right now.
Yes.
Like July, the month that is renowned for not a whole lot going on in the sports world in general.
Right.
There's the baseball All-Star game. There are some cool events individually, but like almost every other month there's multiple things going on and there's so much going on. NBA's done, NHL's done, like baseball's going on. Football is starting with training camps towards the end, but it's really just the very end of that. So for most of July, and when the All-Star break happens, like after the All-Star game in baseball, there's a couple days where there is literally nothing.
Well, that's why ESPN always held the ESPYs.
Right, exactly. So we joke about July a lot, mostly because my birthday's in July, so I like to say it's better than it probably actually is.
And I like to make fun of you for having a birthday.
I
mean, it's not the worst month of the year because that's clearly February,
not.
But March not looking too much better at the moment. But I mean, really, I think July could be an incredible month for sports this year.
Yeah, like I already saw some people on Twitter, and this will lead into
this is nervous,
some of what we're going to talk
laughter,
about.
By the way.
Right, about how like what ratings are going to be like when sports come back. They're like predicting that it's just going to be insane, and like people are going to be like starving for it.
Well, and when they come back, which we're going to get into obviously a lot, they're not likely to be played in front of anyone. So it'll be only the ability to stream or watch in a traditional manner. You're not going to be there to see them. So, let's not bury the lead too much. I'm Joe Mays. This is Justin Raffoff. This is the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, episode 299.
It's a doozy.
Bringing in 300 in style. Let's say next week. I mean, things could be drastically different a week from now, because last week we didn't talk. Did we even mention coronavirus last week?
I'd be stunned if we did.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, coincidentally, we're talking about a lot of sports, not just football. Right. We talked about basketball, baseball, and hockey. All of which
I don't think we really brought it up much because we talked about how the show was going to have the contest, the bracket contest. And all that. I don't think it.
We should be talking about Selection Sunday. That is what the show was going to be. We were going to be talking about some of our all-time favorite players for the Phillies, Flyers, Eagles or Dolphins, and Penn State football. We were going to have brackets of 16 for each of those. We were going to walk through them. This is our personal interest, and we were going to invite everyone to do it themselves, and then obviously unveil the bracket as March Madness got underway, and then talk about the ESPN Bracket Challenge, the tournament challenge that we do every year, and is always one of our biggest events of the year. Just like many, many people out there are tuned in to college basketball for, at least this first weekend, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which would be this week coming up. is always amazing.
A couple years ago, I went with some college friends. The first round, well, like that first weekend, the Thursday and Saturday games were in. There was a site in Pittsburgh, and some college friends and I met up at those games, and we bought the tickets beforehand, right? And we were staying at a hotel across the street, like, and meeting up with some college buddies. Like, it was going to be a fun time. However, we go, and it ends up being Duke against Rhode Island and Villanova against Alabama, and Villanova went on to win the national title that year.
It's a good year.
And that Friday night was the game that Virginia, the 1 seed, got upset by the 16 seed. So everyone is in the hotel lobby watching the game. We're at a hotel where Rhode Island is staying. So, like, there were tons of Rhode Island fans there. Like, it was just pure chaos. And so much fun, like, going to that event. And yet, I don't know. I'm always into March Madness, but, like, being there was a really cool experience. And, like, gave me a new appreciation. Like, it's definitely something to do if you haven't had the chance. Like, they're back-to-back games, and, like, now we got lucky, but you just see these huge, like, it's just a huge crowd, and, like, lots of Duke fans there, obviously, but, there are just lots of basketball fans there, too. Just people there to have a good time and watch the games. It was just a really cool experience, and it's a shame that we get nothing. This time around. Like, and just to be clear about this, me feeling bad about not having it to watch is very low on the list of, like, things I actually feel bad about in terms of that. Like, just like the seniors, like the programs that haven't been there forever,
Ours in particular.
So you look at, like, you can combine some of those, and you talk about Lamar Stevens, a senior at Penn State, 7 points away from being the all-time leading scorer.
Which he clearly would have gotten because Penn State
would have gotten
was
in the game against Indiana.
At least 2 games.
Right.
In the first of the Big Ten, which they had a very good chance of winning at least that game and moving on to the next round. And then they would have made the March Madness. At one point, they were thought of as possibly a 2 or 3 seed. I think realistically, they probably would have been a 5 or a 6, is my guess.
Yeah.
But, it's not meant to be. Everything's canceled. That's the thing. Everything is canceled. If it's an entertainment outlet, a gathering of people in professional, collegiate, or scholastic, nationally canceled and locally in many places canceled.
And so I distinctly remember, I think, when did the NBA do it? It was Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was late Wednesday, like 9:30
on Wednesday
or something.
night, when the Oklahoma City Thunder game, when the trainer runs out to basically onto the floor and gets the officials' attention and makes them leave, and they won't let the players leave.
Like, they're just like, go
they
back.
They make everyone leave except the players, and they hold them back. And some Utah Jazz players had it, and the NBA cancels. Well, not cancels. They suspend. They go on hiatus. That's when you knew everything was going to happen. And I think we might have even sent it in text. The dominoes are going to be falling tomorrow morning. Well, and they did.
It started earlier that day locally.
Yes, yeah.
If you're a Pennsylvania native and you're familiar with scholastic sports, while spring sports started 2 weeks ago, or nearly 2 weeks ago, and at this time it was just over a week ago, the winter sports were winding down. All that I think were left were across all 6 levels of basketball, boys and girls. The state championships were trying to whittle down from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. Some got there, some didn't. And then the 2A swimming championships. The 3A got cut a little short, but 2A hadn't gone at all. All of a sudden, there were a couple instances, one of which hit us here locally with Wilson was supposed to play a game against Lower Merion, the school that Kobe Bryant is famous for attending. But Lower Merion School District had been closed last Tuesday for sanitization because I don't remember if it was students or if it was,
I think it was 2
specifically
students and a parent or something like that.
had been at the same place that a doctor that was diagnosed with the virus. So there were no I think, confirmed cases at that time, but
Correct.
because of the exposure, they decided to play it safe,
Right.
and then that got people not wanting to host the game. So
Right.
Coatesville backed out, got moved to Milton Hershey. Milton Hershey backed out, got moved to Reading. Reading backed out.
Which is one of those, like, and again, this is I understand, but like it was just interesting to me. Coatesville backing out, okay, that was not, in theory, that was not what they had signed up for. You know what I mean? Like, just the issues that could present themselves.
Right.
But Milton Hershey and Reading both, like, you knew when you accepted the game. Now, I also understand that a lot of times the person making this decision is the athletic director or someone at that administrative level. And in reality, all it would take is a superintendent or, now, Milton Hershey's a different situation because that's a really different school. It's a boarding school. But, like, all it would take is someone high up, a superintendent, or I don't know if there's, like, trustees at Milton Hershey or whatever. You know, I don't think there's a traditional school board. But, like, at Reading, if there's a few school board members or a superintendent or someone who's like, no, this is not happening. You know what I mean? That's all it takes. And then, no, it's not happening. But, and I understand. While it was frustrating and the back and forth was what made it even more frustrating. Like, I understand a school being like, I don't think so. The back and forth made it a little frustrating because, like, you could have just said no from the start.
And to put it in perspective, or maybe to clear things up for those that aren't in the know of this or don't have anything to do with Pennsylvania, this is before everything blew up. Like, this is before anything really happened. There were confirmed cases and suspected cases, and that was it. Like, there was nothing else going on. Everything was still going on as planned. You heard people talking about, oh, maybe
at the time, I don't think there were any confirmed cases in Pennsylvania yet. Like, when this first started.
No, there were, because when I messaged you on Tuesday about the game Wednesday, I had said to you that doctor had been confirmed that was from CHOP but operating in King of Prussia, and that, like you said, 2 students and a parent or 2 students and a teacher had been to see that doctor or someone in that building, and there were concerns that maybe they had it, and it was, and that's how this all started.
Now, just to be clear, like, Lower Merion High School is not far from, like, King of Prussia, where like, it's pretty close, all right there off of 202. But, it was just kind of pure chaos, and you feel bad, because they just want to play. So I was talking to someone on Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Thursday. About how, like, I remember, now, my last high school basketball game was before I moved, right? And honestly, like, I was in 10th grade on a team that was really good, so I wasn't going to play. You know what I mean? But, like, I remember being there for our district game, and we got upset and lost. And that was the week we had found out we were moving. Like, there was all kinds of, like, things. Like, it was not a fun time. But, like, I knew, like, all right, it's over. We lost. Right. You know what I mean? Like, there was some closure to that. Not the closure I wanted, but it was over. To not have that sense of finality is worse in my opinion.
The season never, like, okay, so
you make the playoffs, especially you make the state playoffs and you win all your games, you're not supposed to not get the championship.
Right.
Like,
and so PIAA invoked a basically moratorium of 2 weeks, which a lot of schools adopted for educational purposes, then was invoked by the governor.
Right.
The PIAA is meeting tomorrow to discuss, and after what the CDC came out with this evening, which was a recommendation of all events being canceled that have 50 or more people for 8 weeks, which takes you into the middle of May, just after Mother's Day, I can't see how they continue to postpone winter sports into May. You wouldn't, and you would have to give these teams time to practice, because they're not practicing. They have no contact whatsoever.
Right.
This is, this, and then I see people saying this is not like a snow day. You're not off from school or off from work and you get to hang out and go places and do things. Right. This is, you stay at home, only go out if you need something essential or you're not feeling good.
Right.
Like, that is the extent of it. So I cannot in any way see how winter sports are saved, which is very, very disappointing for those teams left standing. And the unfortunate thing for basketball is if it would have waited another week, they might have been to the point where they could have possibly said, would they have been down to 2 by then? I guess they wouldn't have been to 2. They would have been at 4, huh?
Probably.
If they would have been down to 2, you could have just declared co-champions. I don't like it, but
it's unprecedented.
It's unprecedented. There are extenuating circumstances. Nothing to this level has happened in the world. I mean, that's a little heavy-handed because there's obviously other examples, but the one that comes up the most is the Spanish flu from 1918.
Right.
So,
in which, just for the record,
a hockey player died.
Well, and Philadelphia did not cancel their St. Patrick's Day parade, and I think 200,000 cases ended up in Philadelphia /Philadelphia area. So like, whereas like Chicago or someone did, I forget what it was, and they had like 100 cases. Like, and it's not. We kept saying this, and you and I have these conversations all the time about, like, we go back on how the show started. We have these conversations literally all the time.
Yeah.
We were like, let's just sit down and talk about it and record it. But when we were talking about this, one of the things we did was we just kind of mentioned, like, a few things. But one of the things I mentioned was, I'm so glad I don't have to make these decisions. But second of all, like, even when they're not the decision that I want to happen, I understand, and it's probably the right decision. And when I say I don't want it to happen, it's just no one would ever want this to happen. You know, like, I don't mean it like, but it's just tough. You know, like, it's tough because I feel for the kids. I feel for the coaches. I feel for, you know, I feel bad for lots of people. And it's tough because there are times where I sit back and I'm like, you know, you got to keep it in perspective, you know, but like, I also know, like, that's adult me talking. Like, 18-year-old or 17-year-old me would not have handled this very well.
No. And I mean, the NCAA,
and that's understandable. Like, it's understandable.
The NCAA stepped in right away and is already working out how they're going to allow spring athletes an additional year of eligibility. Now, that it gets a little hairy because you think it could be just, oh, we're just going to snap our fingers and give everyone that had, you know, this semester left, we're going to give you another one. But then it comes down to, well, what do you do about scholarship counts? Are you going to extend that? Because you don't want it to trickle down and hurt someone because these players are all sticking around for another year.
What about the schools? Like, we think of like the big schools where, you know, they have a few $1 million in profit revenue every year. Well, things can change. Now, most spring sports are not revenue generating sports.
No, it's fall and winter.
However, when you look at it, it's not as simple as like, oh, hey, yeah, your school can give an extra 5 scholarships next year because you had 5 seniors. Well, yeah, what if the school can't afford 5 scholarships? You know,
because they have to keep 5 others on, and
like,
add 5 more to it. Yeah.
You know,
it's going to get dicey. It's going to get hairy. From a business perspective, this is a better time of the year for it to happen than the fall, for the reasons you just said. If this happens during football season and trickles into basketball season, that's crippling for collegiate athletic
departments. As much as I hate seeing this at the beginning of March / any time. Imagine if this had happened in the time where it happened in China, where like it's January,
December, January,
and then you are trying to make the call on whether or not you're canceling the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, and talk about when I disagree with Roger Goodell, I put it out there. You know, not that anybody cares, but you know what I mean. Like, I have no problem voicing my opposition when I feel like he makes a bad case for something or when he's on the wrong side of something. But I also feel like I give him credit when I feel like he gets it right. That's a situation where there's no win. And it's the same position. It's just different scale for a lot of these things. You know, NCAA tournament, again, the whole players, you know, should get a share of that. All that stuff aside, NCAA men's basketball tournament is billions of dollars in revenue.
Going a lot of places.
Yeah, and that money, a lot of it goes to executives and, chairman of conferences, and lots of it gets dispersed out, but it also helps fund programs. Like, and you can see this somewhat with and it started in the Big Ten. The Big Ten network, if I have to give Jim Delaney credit for something, like the Big Ten network is what they got right, because it's the model that all the other
Schools
conferences. Well, I shouldn't say that. The conferences that are doing it right are getting it off there, but other conferences are trying to use their own models, and it's not working as well.
Pac-12.
But those schools, that's the one I was thinking of. Those schools, like the Big Ten schools, do very well. Like they talked about, Maryland had to pay like $40 million or something, or maybe it was like $35 million to the ACC to get out their first year. Their first 2 or 3 years, something like that, they got $40 million from the Big Ten network shares. So just that aside, they get, so it more than made up. And at the time, the ACC didn't even have a network, so that's new revenue for them.
Right.
So
yeah,
we got sidetracked there a little bit, but difficult decisions.
Unimaginably difficult.
But the right decisions, honestly, when I sit back and I evaluate it, it's the right decision. Doesn't make it easy to take, though.
So we're going back to the talk about the new CDC guidance that literally came out in the last hour. Recommendations, not requirements, but encouraging basically anyone and everyone to prevent gatherings of 50 people or more. Then they specifically called out things like weddings, which I cannot even imagine what that'll do to people and that industry.
Right.
But those entertainment venues and hosting sites are going through something unlike anyone's seen. Right. Literally, probably anyone on this planet can remember.
Right.
And the professional sports league, trying to reel it back in and keep this show focused on what it's supposed to be about, because we could talk about a variety of topics about COVID-19, but sports related. NBA, NHL suspended their seasons. Not canceled. They're just postponed for now. The ECHL, a feeder league for minor league hockey, especially on a local level, did outright cancel their season. Locally, the Reading Royals will not be playing anymore. Their season is done. Scholastic is looking like, at least in the state of Pennsylvania and elsewhere, others have canceled already. My guess is winter sports championships will be canceled, the ones that are not completed, and spring sports are on life support. They are not. There's a petition going around which has over or nearly 50,000 signatures, asking for it just to be postponed. Obviously, they're not trying to pick it up now or anything. Right. But at the time, I think there are people still thinking that maybe after the spring break period, right around Easter, if schools were back in session, give a week of these teams getting back in to practice mode and everything, and then pick up and start schedules. Well, now it's looking like there's a good chance that even though schools were pointed out as not having to meet the guidance, which doesn't really make much sense to me, and we talked about that before the show, I don't know that schools around the nation or in Pennsylvania will have class before, around, or after Mother's Day.
Right. So you look at it, too, what would you do at that point?
Spring sports starting in May?
In my opinion. Now, so let's say ideally, you could even have it. In my opinion, you should, again, this may not be popular, and I haven't really thought it through. This is on the spot, so there's probably ramifications of this that I haven't.
So are we talking about a start date of May 11th?
Say May 11th. I say
start competition May 18th.
I say you only go old school. There are only league competitions and league playoffs if they want them. There are no district or state playoffs. Because
that's a possibility.
You know what I mean?
Looking at
it used to be that way, not saying that's the best way, but if you're trying to salvage anything, how do you what do you do? Play 2 or 3 games? And for something like softball is different because you can try the same pitcher out there a lot. Baseball, you can't. There are literally rules about pitch counts.
Yeah, that's true. Because
I don't
soccer,
know. I don't know what you do.
Not soccer, sorry. Softball.
Look, boys and girls lacrosse. Track and field. Boys tennis.
I feel like you could, for a lot of them, you could play every other day or every third day.
Yeah.
and get a lot of games in. Like specifically, I'm thinking boys and girls lacrosse
and boys volleyball, I think.
Right, boys volleyball. I knew there was one more. Alternate days, like 1 week the boys play Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The girls play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Next week maybe flip flop that, and right there you're getting 3 games a week. So maybe say you have 3-week season, you get 9 games in.
Right.
I don't know if that's and it would be up to each league. Maybe you have to throw in an even 10 or something like that. I don't know how many teams are in the Berks league because this is all local here. It would all be Berks County because it's not football where we have to worry about the LL stuff. So, or maybe like because Berks is in sections, you play each your section teams twice or something like that. You don't have any crossovers, and then you go into your Berks County championships. I could see them possibly doing that if the season would start May 11th with games starting the week of May 18th. So you pay the week of May 18th, the week of May 25th, and then I guess the first week in June. But now you're like school is basically out. Well, supposed to be. I have no idea what's going.
Who knows?
I don't even want to begin to fathom what they're going to do about that. But now you're talking about that second week of June is when like county playoffs would start. And now maybe the districts are like we'll do a power ratings and we're only taking the top 4.
Right.
Like start at a final 4.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is. Like there's so many times, especially when we're talking about football, where like you and I have an idea and we're pretty sure like that our idea would be better than what would be run. You know what I mean? Like we put it out there. Like this is what it should be or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we have all the answers, but sometimes we feel like we've thought it through more. And there are lots of people with lots of similar and different views than us that do the same thing. Like the PIAA takes a beating on like lots of decisions they make. But these are some of the decisions where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I do not know. I don't even know what the right answer is. When it comes to spring sports, like I don't know. I mean, obviously you can't do anything until you would have like the clearance to do stuff.
Right.
But then like what do you do? Are you like, well, in track there's not really as much like contact necessarily, but like you also have like track teams can have small, but they can also have massive numbers of people on a track team. Like I don't know. I don't know what to do. And that's where I will defer to.
Well,
one, people who get paid to make these decisions.
Right.
Or 2, doctors and the scientists who are going to say, go ahead and do it or do not. You know what I mean? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say PIAA meets tomorrow, so we'll have more clarity on it then. I assume they're going to axe the winter championships. Maybe they'll say we'll keep a wait-and-see approach with the spring and maybe try to do an abbreviated season. But I feel like, honestly, the 8-week period that they're saying, and if schools adhere to that and everything, and everyone goes back May 11th, I feel like that's the latest you could possibly.
So I feel like, and this is my take. I don't know this. I feel like they will keep the postponement of the Winter Sport Championships in place right now on the off chance that they can eventually have them, but no crowds. Like I had seen the idea floating around that there was the idea that they may have 125 tickets per school or credentials per school. It's not happening. That was when the number was 250, and that was last Wednesday or Thursday.
Now it's 50.
And now it's 50.
I mean, now think about like even if each basketball team, even if you cap, I mean, how many people play? You have a starting 5 and maybe 5 more. Say 10 players.
The biggest there are only maybe 12 or 13 spots generally in the scorebook. You can add people in that, like, but the most you're going to ever have is like 15, and that is pushing it.
How many
you're not
do you
gonna
think
play
for Wilson? 8?
Yeah, I think 8 or 9.
Now, I'm not talking about like when they're subbing a bunch of people. I'm talking about in a game that's close and meaningful. How many people realistically see the floor for Wilson? 8 to 9.
I'd say 8. Yeah.
So 10 per team. So you only take 10. Like the other kids can't even come, which I know sucks for seniors that maybe don't get to play as much.
Right.
But this is, like we said, this is not a normal time.
Right. But right there, you're at 20 people already.
But you're at 20 just between that. Well, then you have 3 to 5 coaches. How many athletic trainers?
At least 1 per group. But in theory, you could have 1 at the site.
Grand. But then you're going to need probably at least 2 people from the PIAA. I mean, maybe they could cut that to 1. I don't know.
Right. You have you have technically 4 officials because you have 3 on the court and you have an official keeping the book. And usually both teams have someone keeping the book too. So you have 4 plus 2 more. You have 6 game officials to some degree.
So just with coaches, players, a reduced bench, and officials, you're at like 35 people.
Right.
And that doesn't count arena
And that's not
personnel.
even taking a full bench.
Right, right.
That's saying you've got 10. Which some schools may play more than that, and then they're at a disadvantage. Like.
Well, then do you make that 12? But then are you sacrificing an official? Are you sacrificing some coaches? Maybe you only take the head coach and 2 assistants instead of everyone else.
I don't know. I don't know what you do.
It's just. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe they'll just say, "We're gonna just keep waiting this out," and maybe that's the better route to take.
Right.
Don't outright cancel
because if you don't have to make the decision now, but at some point, like, and this is what I feel like, when they know that it will not happen, they need to make the call. You know what I mean? So like, if for whatever reason, if they know that like, look, we don't have the venues, we can't do this, we can't do that, like, at this certain time, if they know. You know what I mean? Like, they have to make the call. Don't string them along. Right. Basically what I'm saying. And I don't think they will, and I don't think they have. I'm just saying, like, if they know, based on all the information they're taking into account tomorrow, that it's not going to happen, then make the announcement tomorrow. Because there's no need for people to go 2 weeks, for example, thinking, oh, it may happen, it may happen, it may happen, if they know tomorrow it's not going to happen. Does that make sense? Like, right. So don't string them along. And I'm not accusing, like, they've been put on the spot too. Like,
I think the biggest problem for them is that they're not at the same spot in all the tournaments. Yeah. Like, because there's some teams that have made it to the Elite Eight. Right. There's still some teams hanging out in the Sweet 16.
So this was one of the things I wanted to circle back to. Like, one of the issues had started with Mount Lebanon High School, and they're refusing to play Cheltenham, who was closed all week this past week.
Right.
Again. There were all kinds of factors that go into that. I believe, and I read this in one of the articles about it, and I sent you a message right away.
They were going by guidance.
They deferred to the Allegheny County Health Department, which is the health department. Like, Allegheny County is where Pittsburgh is, right? That would be like Philadelphia County. So that, like, I feel like that's a smart move. One, in general, like,
they can push the blame on to them.
Right. Making a decision like that, based on what like, I talked to someone that would be in charge of me. I don't want to put them on the spot here, but like, just after school on a completely different topic this year, and they were just saying, like, in all the classes they did, like, going for their, like, the certifications and things you need to be in a position where you're making decisions at a school. Yeah, like, in all the classes, in all the things you've seen in all your years, experience and all that stuff, he's like, nothing ever prepared me for this situation. Like, this one. Like, this was never a scenario we talked about in any class.
Right.
It's nothing that all my years of experience has ever, like, we've dealt with fights, you deal with all kinds of issues.
Well,
I never dealt with this one.
100-year event, which is essentially what this is not something you spend time, money, or resources on.
Right. So when the in my mind, if the officials at Mount Lebanon are like, we're going to defer to the people who literally do this, like, this is within their realm of things that they've learned, and they say don't go, okay. I do find it interesting, and this is moving off of Mount Lebanon, though, that then later that same day, the Penguins, the NHL had not canceled yet at this point, were saying, no, we're still on season as usual, according to the guidance from the Allegheny County Health Department. I'm like, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, right.
Now,
that's not worth.
I'm not saying the Penguins are, or anything there. I just feel like if you're looking at it at that point, and again, everybody's scrambling, but like, that clearly comes down to the business impact of a 15,000 seat like event or ticket event, as opposed to maybe a 1,500 ticket event. Like, I understand, but at the same time, I was like, it was just interesting because I had read those articles almost back to back, and like, it just was both relying on
doesn't make
Allegheny
much sense
County
at all. Well, so we've been focusing a lot on PIAA and local sports. And that's what we've been dealing with and talking about for the last 5 days. But the NBA and NHL have paused their seasons. They're going to reevaluate. It doesn't sound like they're expecting to return until the middle to end of June. I don't know if they would then attempt to finish the regular season, if they would go to a different playoff format where a few more teams make it as play-in teams to even out the field. I know that's a possibility in the NHL where spots 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all like within 2 to 4 points in both conferences. Do they have like 10 play 7 and 8 play 9 as a play-in game? No matter what, the Flyers and Sixers are entrenched in the top 6.
I wonder if you go to shortened series, especially like preliminary series.
They were saying if there's a play-in, it's a 1 game, which anything can happen in a 1 game.
That's right.
The next round would be a 3.
But just in terms of general sports fan, my gosh, I would love it. Everybody talks about, especially in hockey, one of the greatest things in all of sports is a Game 7 in hockey.
Yeah.
And you'd essentially have that.
You start that. That's where you're starting.
Oh,
it's
my
tied
gosh.
3-3.
Oh, my gosh.
So play-in
Sign me
1
up.
game.
I want to watch.
First round then, which the Flyers would play the Penguins right now, best of 3. Next round, which Flyers would most likely be playing the Capitals, best of 5. Then I don't know if they would allow the Eastern Conference Championship, Western Conference Championship to be best of 5, or do they go to best of 7? And then the Stanley Cup probably would be best of 7, I would think, because at that point, you've got the conditioning down, you've had a lot of on-ice play, it's going to be where it's at. But and they could do the same thing in the NBA. That's an NHL thing that I saw out there as a possibility.
The thing I saw for the NBA was basically a 4-day mini camp, have 7 to 8 games, or maybe they would adjust that, especially if this timetable has been pushed back. But have a couple games to just round out the season, and then, boom, your playoffs start. And again, my guess is, so a few years ago, that first round had gone from 5 games. I say a few years ago. It's probably a bunch of years ago now. But, first round of NBA playoffs used to be 5, and the rest were 7. I feel like you're going to see some adjustments there as well. Again, there's lots of smart people who work for those multi-billion-dollar industries who will get all that stuff sorted out. I just don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I'm excited for when we get to the point where those plans start to come forward.
This is why we said July could be crazy.
We're still weeks away from this stuff.
Now, the NBA article that I read said that the league and teams are talking with arenas and personnel about availabilities into August.
Wow.
So, you're talking middle June, end of June start.
Imagine
July
if the NBA Finals
August,
led up to
the
football start.
We haven't even talked about
Sixers.
baseball. So, baseball, what do they do about baseball? If the CDC guidance about 8 weeks at a minimum, now you're looking at mid-May. They would want at least, I think, 2 weeks to finish spring training because that was already abbreviated. Now you're into June.
Right. I had heard June for baseball for a while.
Well, I honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if baseball kicks off the regular season the weekend of 4th of July.
Okay.
Because mid-May is just the possibility is there.
Right.
Now maybe you say, well, that maybe it adds another 2 or 3 weeks on it. Now you're into June. Well, now you're going to want a couple weeks to finish spring training.
Right.
Now you're basically the 4th. Imagine kicking off baseball when it's normally the All-Star break, essentially.
Yeah, which is just over halfway.
And I'm assuming they're not going to want to push their season much later, so it obviously wouldn't be a 162 game schedule. Would it be 100? Could they even do that?
I doubt they'll even get it in.
You think they just do 80?
Maybe just cut it in half.
81?
Yeah. Well, 80 probably, or 82.
80 or 82.
82 would match what the others do. The other leagues.
The other leagues, right.
On a normal season.
Baseball and hockey. But that's my thoughts with the info we have right now and thinking about what's going on with the. But the thing is, they're also going to have that crunch that you're not usually having, where baseball, basketball, and hockey are all going on. Now I know that happens in April and May, and for some teams June.
Yeah, but the sense of urgency.
But everything's already going to be condensed and crunched. It's going to be an interesting summer.
Well, and then you just look at some of the ripple effects of this. The trade deadline for baseball is the end of July. On a typical season. Now, that would be a month in. And you're going to have to make the decisions. And I feel like baseball has more wiggle room here because their season hasn't started. They've got a lot to work out, but at the same time, they can do that, and then essentially set it up so it can work however they need it to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the other leagues, on the other hand, have a different problem, and maybe not a worse problem, where they just need to figure out how to end it. You know,
Right.
they don't need to figure out, well, we normally play 162 games. Like,
Yeah. The other thing is, before this all started, there was talk about the NBA delaying their season, shifting it from instead of a late October start until like around a Christmas start. That's the kickoff of their season.
Because
Football
Christmas-
is
Christmas
essentially
Day,
over.
they get killer ratings.
They
on
get
Christmas
great
Day.
ratings on Christmas. That's your marquee matchups and kickoff. Now you play, instead of October to June, now you're playing December to early August.
Right.
And
When
you don't
football
have
is
to go up
dropping
against
off.
most of football other than playoffs,
Right.
which are limited on the weekend.
Right. And so you probably just wouldn't see big weekend games the first month of the season in the NBA. You'd see big weeknight games
Right.
and Christmas Day games.
And assuming they can figure this all out with money and the CBA and getting the players' unions on board, and this goes for pretty much every league, this would be a great year for them to try that, because if you're only wrapping up the previous season in August, players aren't exactly going to be happy to come back at the end of September to train for a new season.
Right. Exactly.
So this is the year for the NBA to try that. Maybe they kick off the start of the 2020 season, which will essentially become just eventually basketball will only be known by 1 year like baseball is, which is great because I hate the overlap. I hate that football is keep pushing to the next year, because when I talk about the 2019 season, it's the 2020 Super Bowl. If you say the 2019 Super Bowl and you actually mean the 2020 Super Bowl, which is Super Bowl 54, but like it gets super confusing. So the NBA will be closer to Major League Baseball, which would be great. The NHL is another monster because while the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball get a lot of money revenue from broadcast, the NHL gets a majority of their money from gate revenue.
Right.
So the NHL has no interest in shortening their season next year because they need every team to play 82 games.
So what? And this is me getting way ahead, and I don't know the deals, and it's interesting because unlike football is a different animal when it comes to TV rights and everything like that than the other leagues, because of the number of games and the national broadcasts and everything. It would be interesting to me if the NBA shifted, if that would create a possible like desire for someone like ESPN to jump back into the NHL market,
Because you only have
because
football.
having that opportunity to broadcast games,
You
let's say
essentially would have
October,
3
November,
months-
December.
Right, you have 3 months of hockey without basketball. Hockey's
now,
only
when
competing
basketball
against
comes
football.
back up, it would be kind of
Dicey.
crazy. But football will have ended, so basically you become basketball and hockey.
Yeah, maybe that would help.
I don't know, and I don't know that they listen. I'm sure they make a bid every time, but like it's also different because you're not talking about the only games. You're just talking about big games. You know, like it would be interesting to see, and I think it's despite the shortcomings, like having ESPN broadcast your games is a good thing. You know, because it
for
just
sure.
it puts your league and your brand and your players out there so much. Like it would be a positive for them. I don't know that would work out. It doesn't have to be them, but just, you know, the opportunity for them to have a moment too where, because I don't feel like people are like, oh, I'm not watching hockey because I'm watching football. I guess maybe some people do. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like people are going to watch, people that are going to watch hockey, I feel like are going to watch hockey. I feel like there are more people who are like, oh, I'm not watching the NBA yet because football's still on. And then they do watch the NBA starting at Christmas. I don't know.
I think it makes sense for the NBA. I thought it made sense before all this happened.
Absolutely.
I don't know what hockey's going to do, and that's why I think that they might come back and after abbreviated, camp to get everyone back together. Hopefully the players are practicing on their own, but you can't guarantee any of that. You got to have, a week to 10 days, 2 weeks to get them back in order. I feel like they're going to take the standings as they were, do that abbreviated playoff format, and try to get the season done so the players can get home, rest, move into the offseason, do free agency in the draft, and then be back. Maybe they'll delay it a little. But like their season starts the first full week of October, essentially.
Yeah.
And if they're only wrapping up in July, that's really just 6 to 8 weeks off.
Uh-huh.
So that's half of what they usually get. So that
And talk about a grueling sport. To only get half the time off.
So the elephant in the room that we haven't talked too much about, at least because they're not in season, is the NFL. The big thing that came out this morning was the new CBA was ratified by the Players Union, which means we'll have 10 years of labor peace, no strikes or lockouts or anything for a decade, which I remember when this all went down almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think about.
It feels like it was like 4.
Well, it's when our show started. We were talking about NFL CBA negotiations when we were up in the other room, up in the other bedroom doing this, passing a microphone back and forth.
Probably not the right wording around this time, but like it makes me feel sick because just because it doesn't feel like that. Like it feels like that was more recent than when we started the show
9 years ago. So that's great. Like we don't have to worry about that football nonsense that we had to go through 9 years ago, which didn't end up impacting the regular season at all. It just truncated the off-season stuff,
which was okay.
Which is what they're kind of at the place where we are 9 years ago, where we are now. But I guess not, because tomorrow is the not quite official start of the league year, which I think technically is Wednesday.
Yeah.
But the legal tampering window, which makes no sense.
Right. It is a literal oxymoron.
Right. Starts tomorrow, where you're going to start hearing players get new contracts, re-sign with their team. I mean, they can technically, if they were on a team, I believe they can still re-sign with that team. Yes, they are,
because there were a bunch that came to agreements
I didn't
today.
know if it was one of those like wink and nod approvals that it may not become official till Wednesday, but if you're on a team, you can negotiate with that team.
Right.
And that's what's happening, because we know the Patriots and safety Devin McCourty, I believe it was Devin, re-signed with New England for a 2-year deal.
On Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill back with the Titans.
That's an interesting one.
And the 49ers have come out, or someone related to the 49ers has come out and said that they are not pursuing Tom Brady. So Tom Brady's suitors are dropping.
He's going to be in New England.
Tampa Bay. I just don't want to see him back in New England, because I would love to see that drama unfold. But so free agency is going to go on as planned, apparently, which we heard it was, then it wasn't, and now it is again.
Right.
The thing that I believe is going to go by the wayside, obviously not be canceled, but could be reduced or changed and delayed, is the draft. That's supposed to be at the end of April in Las Vegas. Could they delay that a whole entire month and do it without fans? I just feel like at that point you might as well just do it by phone and email, because what's the point in having people there if you can't? Like, what's the point in having a huge spectacle if people can't be there?
Right.
Because, I mean, like we talked about, if they're still under the 50 people threshold, well, there's 32 teams already. Like, without broadcast, you're already at minimum of 32 people, and that's if each team brings one.
Run it more like a selection-style show.
Right.
Oh, my gosh. Imagine the ratings for that. Like, I feel like that would be even bigger.
So the draft happens behind the scenes, and then they announce them. What if you announce them by team? Like, we're announcing the entire draft pick by team at this time.
That would be nuts, because people would be wondering, like, one would come out and then they'd go to a commercial and you'd be wondering, like, did we take him because so and so is gone, or like did they not?
Why did we take him there? So
and like, start with the 32nd team. Like
start at the best team.
Right, start with it. Like,
so you don't.
So
know
I don't know if they have their pick,
was.
but like start with the Chiefs. Like start with the Chiefs at 30.
Chiefs at pick. So the Chiefs with the 32nd pick in the draft. But don't even start at 32 though. Start at their last pick.
Yes.
And
do it reverse.
Hey, paging Roger Goodell. You listening?
Spread it out over 3 days. No. Okay.
Oh my God! Could you imagine? So you do like 32 to 21 on Thursday in prime time. Then you do 20 to 11 the next night, and then you do the top 10 picking teams. Well, the thing that would throw a wrench in, well, I guess when like the Steelers would pick, Miami has that pick, but you would just throw the Steelers in there and you would talk about
that. So the way the Eagles normally draft, I say forget it. Just take all the draft eligible people and randomly assign them to teams.
Imagine finding out trades though. Be like, oh well, they didn't pick there because they traded it. Oh man, craziness. But so that's gonna change.
Like, not probably the best, but it would make for quite the spectacle.
The unfortunate thing is, people would be leaking it. Like, like Adam Schefter would just be like, if you want to look at the whole draft, here it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the draft is going to be interesting this year. I don't know if it'll be held in the normal time, just without the spectacle, and they just do, talking heads from ESPN or NFL Network. They just, announce a pick every few minutes and they talk about it. There won't be people there. I don't know. That'll be announced, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. The NFL, it lucked out in so many ways with this occurring now. I mean,
Right.
I would think based on the way everything's going.
Look at it from a thing of if you want to look at the 50-person threshold, that's not even your roster.
Right.
So like you couldn't, in theory, you shouldn't even have your entire team somewhere.
You're going to see mini camps and OTAs canceled, which could that impact the season? I don't see them delaying the start of the season. They didn't delay it when there wasn't labor peace 9 years ago.
Right, and guys hold out and stuff like that.
Right,
like,
so this shouldn't impact, as long as everyone practices social distancing, this shouldn't impact the start of football season. Look, listen, if you won't do this to keep your grandparents alive because you just don't care, and there are people out there that are being ridiculous if you look at pictures from bars around the nation, do it for football season. If there's something to get you to do it, like if you're that shallow that you need something else to figure out to keep people healthy and away and things happening.
From a very safe distance of about probably 30 yards today, I had this conversation with someone, and he's like, look, whatever. He's like, I just need this to be gone by football season. And I'm like, I'm with you, buddy.
Well,
I'm with you.
Really, if you think at it, but we're only 4.5 months away from that. And
right.
It took to this point, by and large, and things aren't great in China, but they're on the cases are on. You're on that part of the curve, the good part of the curve. That's essentially 3 months.
Right.
So
and that's what I had that conversation with someone the other day. I'm like, 3 months puts us in the middle of June,
early to mid June.
Right.
Pushing towards the 4th of July, for to be at this point.
Right.
And you don't want to all of a sudden be like, this is a magic number. Now we can all start hanging out again, because guess what's going to happen?
Right.
So. Yeah.
So there's that.
So, yeah.
Oh, my.
Anyway, the whole point of the show, while we had to discuss coronavirus and this literal pandemic sweeping the globe and impacting so many things, both trivial and super important.
Literally everything.
Things. Yeah, there's nothing going on that hasn't been impacted in one way or the other, directly or indirectly. It's tough for people that are dedicated to sports, and as unimportant as they are at this time, it's tough when it upends everything. We should be talking about how the Flyers, Sixers did this past week. We should be talking about who are the Eagles and Dolphins going to sign in free agency.
Right.
And
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the Phillies do not get to 88 wins I predicted last week.
Or maybe they only play 88 games and they win
all
88
I'll tell you what. If they get to 88 wins this year, it was a great year.
It was a great year. You're right. It was a great year. So, yeah. I mean, we'll be back next week because it's show 300. So what crazy stuff will happen in the next week?
I don't know.
I mean, maybe we won't be allowed to be together. Maybe you will be remote next week. I don't know. And I'm not saying that to get a laugh. That may very well be, because we talked about this show's going to happen because we can do this over the phone.
I've tried to be very careful. I touched the mic, my headphones, the fidget spinner, but those are the only things I've touched. I haven't touched any. Not because, just because. Feel like it's the appropriate thing to do.
My dad just texted, it's too late, can't change your picks. He's going to hold us to those 88, 87 wins or 88 and 89 wins.
They're going to have an 82-game season, and he's going to be like, 88 wins.
Aren't you guys tired of being wrong all the time?
Watch him win the World Series on win number 88.
There you go. We'll take it.
Mark it down.
Told you.
Championship.
Yeah, so we were sitting here a week ago not having any idea that this was coming. Things could be drastically different a week from now. We will have the show March 22nd. Whether Justin's here with me in person, we'll find out. It'll be a 300th show surprise of is Justin here or not.
Surprise! Everybody has to stay locked in their own houses.
But this is why digital media is so important right now. Not just places like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and things like that, but your video library. People are looking for old sports films, so if you have those.
Oh, just quick side note, friend of the show, Andy Herr, posted all those pictures.
He's got like every Nebraska basketball game you could put. Is that who it was?
I assume so.
Yeah, I
like,
just kind of assumed.
He's got more game film in his like stack there than probably the Nebraska athletic department. Like, that was amazing. I was amazed.
It's Nebraska basketball. Like, I didn't even realize there was a super fan that big. Like, it's Nebraska
I didn't realize they played that many games on TV.
If he's listening to this, he's about to kill us.
Yet he'll also partially agree with us. Because he'll be like, he'd probably say that 3/4 of those games should not have been on TV.
I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but I respect it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But 300 episodes next week.
So Ben Jones, Penn State writer, is doing this thing. I have to like follow up on Wednesdays. It's basically a Penn State viewing book club, essentially, or equivalent. He's gonna put it out the link. Everybody watch it on their own, and then there's gonna be a discussion about the game because why not? Why not?
Yeah, what else do you have to do? I saw one of my favorite accounts on Twitter, PA Football History, was talking about getting let's get a vintage football game film, and right away someone tagged me in that. I believe it was Marty Palm was like, you need to see Joe Mays. And I've talked to the PA Football History guy in the past many times, and I told him, I was like, it took me 4 months, but I have every game that the school district that the football team had on VHS from 1945 through I think 2006. Now, not every season had every game, but from about the early to mid 50s on, there are 7 to 10 games for every season. And they have the first ever game in color from 1945, which is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. A lot of those 40s and early 50s games I have up on the Wilson Football YouTube page. I have not put the rest up because technically it's a fundraiser for the team, and if you want to buy it on USB drive.
However,
DVD,
if you're looking for something to do.
But if you're looking for something to do, you can find some of those old games on YouTube or contact me, and I can sell you them on behalf of the football team. But yeah, it's a crazy time. I mean, PCN immediately stepped up and was like, "Hey, we're gonna show old basketball games from the state championships,
some classics,
some really good ones." And I believe a lot of the college networks have started doing that, or maybe ESPN is running that, or maybe it was Big Ten.
It's only a matter of time until they start running.
They're showing old
every ESPN
games.
channel should just be like ESPN Classic, and they should dedicate to a league. And then just
this time slot you had set aside for this, throw on some of those classic games. Now I know that's probably tough for CBS. Did you see?
There was a kid. He's like a senior at some school down in like North or South Carolina or something like that. He went through and made a One Shining Moment montage of basketball clips from this season, from the regular season, because there won't be one from the tournament this year, and put it out there, and it blew up. It went viral,
I saw one
and all these sports people were sending it out. It was really cool, and it's like, I don't want to say just, I don't want to demean, but it's a regular college kid who just put this together.
Did you see one of the cynical, sarcastic one of empty arenas and stuff?
Yes, I saw that one.
March Sadness is what everyone's calling it. Yeah. Which
I did see some people are doing some places are simulating the games and still advancing the brackets.
I saw Damon Turbot from ABC 27, closer to Hershey, that area. He's the sports guy there, and they had been following the Hershey Bears, which I don't think the AHL is canceled yet. The ECHL did, but I don't think the AHL is. And the Hershey Bears are pretty good every year.
It would make sense that the AHL isn't as long as the
it's
NHL isn't, because especially for playoffs, there are guys that get called up.
Right.
Hershey Bears have been called up
for the Capitals. Right. They were about to play one of their rivals, Scranton Wilkes-Barre Penguins. So they took NHL 20 and simulated the game, showed highlights on the news broadcast.
I love it.
Of the Hershey Bears playing the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Penguins.
I'm here for all of it.
The Hershey Bears won 4-2. They're up 2-0. Scranton Wilkes-Barre tied it. They got a late goal to go 3-2, and they got an empty netter to go 4-2. I mean, they showed highlights just like they would have a regular game.
What was the one tweet that showed the guys sitting around watching bowling, and the guy gets a strike?
There's a whole six dudes.
Quick side
bowling,
note: in better times,
a week ago,
one of the years in college, we were sitting. It was a beautiful spring day, a Sunday, and it was the Sunday of the Masters, right? And Tiger is there, and so we're hanging out like outside because it was really nice. Then we go up to the apartment, and Tiger's there, and he hits that like iconic shot at the Masters, the chip from off the green that kind of goes, and then it sits there, and then like rolls in. Like it seemed like a minute later. It was really like probably partial second later, but and we had in the room, we had that reaction to that moment. We all jumped up and like, oh my gosh, like it was just crazy because like it was just the spectacle that was, you know what I mean? Like, and the way the Nike logo was like pictured perfect, like framed perfect on it. I'm like, that's a instantly. I'm like, that is a commercial in the making. Like, they don't even have to edit it. It's just right show there. That clip. And to have that kind of reaction over anything, like, there are lots of much more serious things, and you kind of alluded to this. There are lots of much more serious things that have to get sorted out in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Hopefully, those things, work out to the best case scenarios. You know what I mean? And then we can get back to the things that have so much meaning for us that in the grand scheme of things aren't all that meaningful. You know what I mean? But like where we can I can't wait to get back to the point where sports are super meaningful in our lives, because that's a good thing, because that means the other things have gotten back to normal. Right. Does that make sense? Like,
I completely understand and agree. And at a time, people like events like this, as people turn to these forms of entertainment for a distraction.
Right.
And I think that's why people are so bummed and talking about it all the time, is because we're at home not allowed to do anything. We need something to distract us, and the stuff that a majority of people would turn to is not available. Whether that is sports or arts and entertainment, not of the sports variety, because those all things are gone too. Like, you're not supposed to go to museums and movie theaters and malls and art shows and exhibits. Right. Like, Broadway's shut down.
Right.
Like, everything is closed where there's, except for drunk people at bars, apparently, because that's all I see pictures of is people lining up to go to bars.
Again, easy for me because I don't own a bar. However, I just feel like it's never the wrong time to do the right thing, right? Like, I'll just say it at that. So,
I mean, I don't make. That's not so much.
I know.
I mean, the bars, I guess technically they could close and prevent that from happening, but it's also the people that see a crowd and just continue to make the crowd bigger.
Right.
That's
right.
I'm not really holding it against the business.
It's not on one person. When there's a crowd of people like that, it's lots of individuals' decisions.
Mob mentality.
Yes. So, hopefully we get past that without it being because things went horribly wrong. More. And like I said, let's hope for lots of best case scenarios over the next few weeks and months, and we'll see how things go.
Right, and I don't think we're going to be doing anything big for our 300th episode, but we'll be back next week to talk about. I guess NFL free agency is going to be the big thing.
Yeah.
What has been canceled and postponed will be at the top.
I hope to be able to be here, but we shall see.
We will see. So that wraps everything up, though, for episode 299. Again, stay healthy, stay safe, and until next time, just remember to wash your hands and stay away from everyone. All right.
Goodbye forever.
Good. Oh, man, that was ominous. See ya.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as The Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.